Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome to Conflict Radio. I guess I ended that a little early, but I was trying to do that so I can look over here and look at a text from my wife. We actually quit smoking yesterday. Wait, yes, yesterday morning was our first day without any cigarettes. We woke up and did the whole day without smoking anything, and today we haven't smoked anything either. She just texted me. That's why I was hurry up. She says, "Oh my God, baby, I'm imagining throwing shit at people." She's at work today, and we're having a good time with it because I'm on the patch, but she's going straight cold turkey, and so she's doing the whole really angry thing. We tried I guess on Thanksgiving Day we tried quitting cold turkey together, and we lasted about an hour, 2 hours before we were like ripping each other's throats out. So we said, you know what? I'm just gonna go to the store. We're gonna get smokes, and we're gonna do it a little bit differently because we can't both be angry at the same time because that doesn't end well. So she's doing angry, and I'm just kind of chilling out. I probably have too many patches on. I think I have patches all over. I'm supposed to take patches off. I don't know. So anyway, that's where we are. Today is December 6th, and I've got Anthony Peake coming on, and I could get him live. He's in the UK. I could, I'd love this new format that we have. Like this, we do an hour, and then we do 30 minutes of you guys chatting and asking questions. It's really fun, and I wanted to get him on live. I couldn't get him on live now. It's 6:30 here in Central Time where I am, and I think it's like the middle of the night over there. I guess he's like 8 or 9 hours ahead of me or something. I'm not really sure what it is. 7 maybe. I'm not. I don't know. But I guess he's sleeping. So I have him on at 9:30 his time in the morning, and that is going to be 3:30 for me, 4:30 Eastern time, and I don't know what time that is for you guys in Australia. I thought you guys were going to be really excited that we're going to be live with Anthony Peake on the evening in Australia. It's going to be 4:30 Eastern time. Let me look here. I can switch over and look at the link here. No, that's. I suppose I should subscribe to his YouTube channel. Hey guys, the links are in the description below. Anthony Peake has a YouTube channel. Check this out. It's really neat. Go over there and subscribe. I want to look real quick over at, here we go. It says live in 8 hours. So in 8 hours, we're going to be live with Anthony Peake. Now, I interviewed Anthony Peake before, and conflict should take up edibles. Well, no, I'm good. I there's no nicotine in a bowl, right? I mean, I can hit the bowl every now and then. Anyway, let's see who we got here. Dr. Strangelove, AB, Calvin's World News. This is my story. Stefan Gadja, Gazoo, Dr. Strangelove. How you doing? Andrew, Hugo Darn, Mandela Affected is here. Kayla, I had the patch. She says, "Thank you." It's I see you guys are doing this this quit smoking thing here. Wow, awesome. Thanks so much. Yeah, trying to do that. Let's see, Sapphire Sun. All right, so I guess not quite human. How's everybody doing? Vash Wolfward, I see he's here. AB. So there we go. The patch. Oh my God. All right. Journey Through the Gate Paranormal Podcast is here. 12:40 give or take. I'm in the UK. All right. Well, I mean, what time is that? Is that Australian time in 8 hours? Vash, what time is it now where you are? Or Paul, let me know what time is it there. And then 8 hours. I mean, what time is it going to be? I mean, I figured that'd be pretty cool. Right now, this is me playing video games. Love y'all. I'll talk about the you're talking about the daemon. You said daemon, but I know what you're talking about. All right, so this is what we're going to do right now, all right? Because I wasn't just going to not have a show. I thought, it's Monday, I'm not sick or nothing. Let's get a show done. Let's do something. and I wasn't going to do anything. Okay, so 11:40. So in about 8 hours, it'll be 7:40. So 7:35 p.m. your time, I guess. Not quite human. We're going to, yeah, that's 7:30. Wow, 7:30 at night. We're going to do a show. That's normally the time, Eastern time, that I do the shows here. So it's almost a 12-hour difference. All right. So anyway, what I wanted to say was, we've had Anthony Peake on before. I wasn't going to do this. I think it was like episode 11. You guys are going to have to forgive me. But I thought, I'm going to listen to this old interview I did with Anthony Peake, episode 11. And I thought, why not go live and do it with you guys? And I mean, if you don't want to listen to this, that's totally cool. I mean, I want to listen to what you guys think about it. It's obviously, it's episode 11, guys. All right, I've never done this before, so episode 11 is going to be like, who is this guy? Right? You guys are going to be like, who is this guy? Who is this person? Like, you could obviously tell it's me at episode 11. Okay, so. But anyway, the purpose of this is that you guys give me some questions now, that you guys that aren't going to be able to tune in, give me some questions now, and I can ask him during the show, like from you guys. I can ask him. No, Paul. Nope. We didn't do every episode with him back then. We did not. It was like every other one or once in a while or something. I think there was only, out of like 100 and something episodes, there's only like 35 or something with him in it. So it wasn't like he was there all the time. So we're going to listen to this old one from episode 11. At least I am. If you guys don't want to tune in, you're not interested, it's totally cool. Come back and check out the recorded one tomorrow. Unless you're in Australia or UK or something, you can listen to it live and participate in the live show in roughly 7.5 hours. Ask who I missed it. I don't know what you mean, Mark. Anyway, so let me... All right, so I might pause this as we go through it. If you guys want me to or something, and I'll chat through it or whatever. We'll listen to it together. And I'm not really sure how it's going to work. I'm just going to hit play here on this old MP3 that I have. Welcome back to... All right, now keep in mind, the audio is probably going to stink. All right, but let's do this anyway. This will be fun. And you guys, if you have any questions for Anthony Peake, you're not going to make the live show, write it down in the description box now, and I will write it. I have my pad and paper here. I will write it down and ask him in about 8 hours when we have him on live. Otherwise, let's listen to this. I'll shut up here. Let's listen to this. Well, I mean, I'll shut up. The live me will shut up. The recorded me will play. So here we go. Conflict Radio. We're with Anthony Peake. His newest book, The Hidden Universe, an investigation into non-human intelligences, is out now. Anthony, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very well, Michael. And how are you over there in the States?
Pretty good. It's quite a crazy time, that's for sure.
Oh, totally strange. I've just come off a call with a friend of mine who's based in London, but she's at the moment staying with family in Ontario. And it's the same kind of thing. We were discussing just how weird the world is and how you can't really plan the future anymore in the way you used to be able to. It's a disturbing time. It is a strange time, but maybe it's here to test us in some way. As somebody once said to me, it's one of those. It's a 3-foot judge. I don't know if you've ever heard that term.
No, I haven't actually.
Okay, it's one of those small things sent to try us.
Well, it's definitely trying us for sure.
It certainly is.
You want to tell us about your newest book, The Hidden Universe? What is it about? An investigation in the non-human intelligences. Like, we can't even figure our own out.
Yes, finding intelligence is quite difficult sometimes. The book really is the culmination of my 11 books, well, my 10 books and 11 books, including this one. And it's very much my interest in when people encounter entities, non-human entities in out-of-the-body experiences, near-death experiences, UFO encounters with the Fae, encounters with goblins, whatever we want to call it. I wanted to do the science of it. I wanted to understand, rather than just writing a book which just reports all these weird and wonderful encounters from around the world, as you know from my writing style, is to do the science first and to understand exactly what might be taking place when this happens. And this was the reason behind the book. And I'm really pleased with how well this book came out, and indeed how well it's been received, both nationally and internationally, because I come up with a quite revolutionary new approach to the whole argument of exactly what are these entities that we encounter in these experiences. Are they independent of us, or are they in some way a reflection of our own psyche, or are they even created by us in some bizarre way? And indeed, my latest work, which I'm working on at the moment, will be taking that one step further.
So can you tell us what have you discovered? What are they part of us, or are they?
They are both. In my opinion, and of course it's only my opinion based upon my own research into the subject, interviewing lots of people and doing work into neurology, neurochemistry and various other areas, is that I'm very much of the school of people like John Keel and Jacques Vallée, who's arguing that whatever the entities are, they are not what they seem to be. They seem to present themselves in a particular way to reflect the societies that they're within. They also reflect the technology they're in, because as we know from the histories of UFO encounters, if you looked about way back to the airship flaps of the 1890s in central areas of the United States, the entities that were in these flying machines were basically human. Not only were they human, but they had human behaviors. And when asked where they came from, they usually turned around and said they came from Germany or they came from Europe somewhere. Clearly they weren't, but that's what they claimed. And then we roll forward and we get into after the Keith Arnold encounter at Mount Rainier in the late 1940s. We are then in the space age, when Sputnik went up and everything. And suddenly the aliens then became entities that seemed to be from out of space, and they reflected the mores and the ideas of what aliens would look like at that time. Then as time developed, they seemed to morph into something stranger again. But if you look throughout history, these entities have been with us since forever, from ancient cave paintings. And in the book, I start off with evidence of a group of cave paintings that were discovered in 2017 in northern India, which nobody had been in there for at least 10,000 years. And when the cave paintings were discovered, what did they discover the cave paintings showing? Flying machines and creatures with large black eyes and peculiar shaped skulls. So clearly, whatever the grey image is, it seems to be something that is consistent throughout time. But what really intrigued me, and it was to do with experiences within my own life regarding my own mother, and this is a really curious tale, is that around about 8 or 9 years ago, my mother phoned me up one evening and said she'd had a peculiar encounter. She lives on a comparatively isolated village in the northwest of England, and she was going on to the village with my aunt, and my aunt stopped to tie her shoelace. And as my aunt went down to tie her shoelace, my mother said that she saw flying over a local factory
Thank you,
what she
Dr.
described as
Strangelove.
being
Appreciate
a
that.
disc of smoke. She said the disc of smoke moved very, very quickly, started to revolve, and then shot off towards North Wales. She said, what did I see? And I said, I've no idea, Mother. It could have been because you're partially sighted. There could be many issues here. But what I didn't say was that she'd seen a UFO, because my mother is not into UFOs. I mean, she's an elderly lady. She was in her late 80s. It's not in her worldview. So she wasn't going to anticipate this. Anyway, 2 days later, I get a phone call early one morning, and she's in a state of absolute hysterics. And I tried to calm her down, and then she explained to me that she woke up in the middle of the night in a state of sleep paralysis. Now, as you know, sleep paralysis is when you wake up, but you're not fully awake. You're in something called REM intrusion. It's whereby you're effectively dreaming, but you're also perceiving the world around you. And dream images will project themselves into three-dimensional space. It's as if you're having a waking dream, and you also cannot move. And she said that she noticed that the bedroom door was open. Now, she lives alone, and she was quite worried about this. And then she said, and she described how 3 spindly fingers came round the edge of the door, and this little creature poked its head round the door. And this is literally how she described it. She said it looked insectoid. It had huge black eyes. It had 2 holes for a nose and a slit for a mouth. It looked at me, realized I'd seen it, and dodged back. And she said, and then I sort of dozed off to sleep in a state of absolute terror. And she said, Tony, what did I see? And I started to explain to her that, it was just a dream. It was just a dream. But for me, having been interested in ufology since the mid-1960s, I immediately recognized this to being a grey. Now, why would a little old lady in her late 80s, who had no experience or reading about these entities, describe an entity that was exactly the same as people 10,000 years ago were painting on cave walls in northern India? On top of this, there are a series of caves in southern Africa called the Junction Shelter, where Graham Hancock, the ancient history guy, was down there, and he noticed there on the cave paintings there showed exactly the same entities. Clearly, these are entities that have been with us for a long time, and I think that in medieval times and throughout history, they've been interpreted as being fairies, they've been interpreted as goblins, kobolds, gnomes, elves, many, many things. But they're the same thing. They're the same manifestation. They are linked normally to caves, to darkness, and to me, there is a direct link here. And what I argue in the book is that they are part of our subconscious, but, and this is the important but, they are also independent of us. They use our consciousness to manifest themselves in this consensual reality.
Well, that's interesting. Are they part of the hologram, so to speak? Are they part of the illusion?
In probably yes. They are not part of this particular version of reality. They're not part of the holographic nature of reality. They seem to exist in a liminal place, which is between what I call the kenoma, which is this reality, the reality that is created by our senses for us. In other words, the perceptual world that we perceive is not what it seems. It's created by the brain using data and information, and the brain then creates out of this data and out of this information an external world. And this external world is shared by others because others are co-creating it as well. Now, the world then is co-created by others, and we inhabit this almost dream sequence that we're creating. Now, again, people who might find this an extraordinary statement I'm making here, but there is nothing I'm saying here that isn't actually based upon known science. Okay, and it is to do with quantum physics, and it's to do with something called the collapse of the wave function. In quantum physics, it is known that subatomic particles, until they are observed or measured, do not exist in the way we normally understand existence to be. A subatomic particle, before it has been measured, is contained in what's called a wave function. And a wave function is effectively a statistical wave in exactly the same way that a crime wave is a statistical informational wave. And the argument is that a subatomic particle, until it is observed, has the statistical potentiality to be located anywhere in the universe. When it is measured or observed, that subatomic particle changes from being a wave function to being a point particle that exists in three-dimensional space-time. The whole of the visual world and the whole of the physical world that we think is out there and is solid is made up of countless numbers of these subatomic particles, all of which are brought into existence by the act of measurement or the act of observation. So therefore, whatever is out there, it is not quite what it seems. For example, you people listening on here, people listening to this, and Michael, you at home sitting, I presume, on a chair, the only reason you don't fall through the chair is something called electrostatic repulsion. Effectively, the molecules in your chair and the atoms that make up the molecules of your chair are 99.9999999999996 empty space. Okay? Literally empty space. The things that are supposedly solid within the atom and within the nucleus of the atom are the electrons, which are point particles, which means they have no extension in space. And inside the nucleus are things, subatomic particles, the proton and the neutron. The proton and the neutron are not basic particles. They are in turn made of things called quarks. And each one of them is made up of a mixture of three different types of quarks, either two down and one up or two down quarks. The quarks themselves are then again point particles, which means that they have no existence, they have no extension in space. So everything that is solid out there is not solid. It is empty space, okay? So when you say you see things, what are you really seeing? Well, what you're actually seeing are photons. And photons are also subatomic particles, which are called bosons, which are the carriers of the electromagnetic signal. Now, photons themselves, the tiny point particles, again, are waves and particles depending upon whether they are observed or not. As we know, light seems to have wave-like things and point particle type things as well. Something called the twin slit experiment has proven this time and time and time again. Now, the interesting thing about photons is photons can only ever travel at the speed of light. They cannot travel at any other speed. Now, we know from Einstein's theory of relativity, we know at the speed of light, something very peculiar happens. Time stops. So from the point of view of a photon, there is no time. So in other words, the photon hitting your eye at the moment, the photons that are giving you the viewpoint of the world, effectively from their point of view, they could have left left the sun 8.5 minutes ago. But as far as they're concerned, there is no time. They are still, you seeing them and them leaving the sun is exactly the same instant. But not only that, you look at the night sky at the Andromeda galaxy, the light waves that are coming from the Andromeda galaxy are in exactly the same position. From their point of view, there is no time. Everything is just the present moment. Now, on top of that, photons have zero mass, which means they don't exist in three-dimensional space. So what do we have here? We have objects that don't exist in space and time, that live in a timeless location and exist in a timeless location, that are allowing your eyes to see and bounce off objects in external reality that are, and I won't say it again, 99.9 to the factor, empty space. The empty space that we actually perceive is much more mysterious. So when we think that we are seeing an external reality, we're seeing something far more peculiar and far more strange. Now, that reality that we perceive, we see, the science is coming to conclude that it's holographic in nature. The brain processes the information from digital information that is supplied to it. And these entities are part of that digital information field, but they're not part of this particular vibrationary state. They are subtly different. And I believe that the entities that we perceive are actually made of not matter as we understand it to be, with our and everything else, but something called plasma. Now, plasma is an ionized gas. Ions are it's another form of, like, you have water, you have gas, and you have solid objects. It's another form of matter that is different to all three of those, and I think this is where the clues lie.
So we only see maybe 10% of visual stimuli out there. Is it possible that they exist beyond what we are able to perceive?
We see far less than 10%. Depends, again, the question when you start moving into this is, what do we mean by visual stimuli? Now, I would argue that visual stimuli is the part of the electromagnetic spectrum that our eyes are attuned to process into something visual, which is literally light. Okay, now light is a very, very small part of the electromagnetic spectrum. And I used the analysis in one of my books, and I said, imagine the electromagnetic spectrum. Now, electromagnetic energy, which is effectively light, it's all photons, it's all light, but it moves from radio waves at one end to gamma waves at the other. And imagine that's like a continuum. If that continuum was the Mississippi River, the Mississippi River, as we know, starts in a little lake up in Michigan, Minnesota, moves all its way down through the central parts of the United States and comes out in the Gulf of Mexico. If that was the electromagnetic spectrum, what we think is the visual world and everything we believe is physically out there is 1.5 inches, about 8 miles south of Hannibal, Missouri. The rest of it we cannot perceive. We sometimes can sense a certain form of light called infrared light, which is on the infrared side of the spectrum, and that we feel as heat. We also have on the other end, we have ultraviolet. But we know that bees can see ultraviolet light. we know that they see the world in a very, very different way. I call this electromagnetic chauvinism. It's the idea that just because our visual field tells us that this is what is real, of course it isn't, because little things like the color red does not exist in external reality. There is no color red. There is no color green. There is no color blue. These are literally just what our brain processes a certain vibrationary state of the electromagnetic spectrum to be like. There is no red out there. There is no color out there. There's no sound out there either. And this is so important. Sound is literally moving airwaves vibrating on your inner ear and your brain processing that as a sound. But sound does not exist unless there's anybody listening. Visual fields, the visual universe does not exist until there is a creature who can actually see it. And this is so profoundly important. And I'll make one other final point about visual systems before we move on to the role of these entities. People believe that what they see with their mind's eye is what's out there. And now a moment's reflection can tell you that this is not the case. What happens is these photons, these weird little objects I was talking about before, they bounce off objects and they enter your eye. They enter your eye and then they hit the retina on the back of your eye. Now, the retina is postage stamp sized and the image on the retina is inverted. It's postage stamp sized and inverted. The information on the retina, the photon information on the retina, is then converted into an electrical signal. So it's changed. And that is then sent down the neurons of the brain, down the optical nerve and down to the visual cortex, which is at the back of the head and the darkest part of the brain. Something then reprocesses that information and presents it to whatever consciousness is in the brain. And consciousness then perceives that postage stamp image, which is inverted, into the three-dimensional surrounding you completely visual field that you're now looking out of in front of your eyes. We know it's an hallucination. We know it's created by the brain for one very good reason. And I would suggest any of the listeners out there, and Michael, you can try this, close one eye. Okay, you've now closed one eye. You should have a blind spot. There should be part of your visual field that is not there. You cannot see part of it. The reason being, at the back of your eye, the optic nerve leaves the back of the eye. So there are no photosensitive cells at the back of the eye there. But your brain literally edits that out. You never see it. It edits it out by creating information from the information around it. Now, if it does it for that, it is quite reasonable to conclude it will do it for everything you perceive. So if you're then perceiving things that your brain wants you to perceive, it suggests that the brain acts as an attenuator. It doesn't give you all the information. And these entities, I believe, exist in the liminal areas at the edges of our perceptions. And it's only under certain circumstances that these entities can be seen. And this is when certain circumstances where people take hallucinatory substances such as dimethyltryptamine, or they're in electromagnetic fields, something of that nature. And that's why things like ghosts people sometimes see and sometimes don't. It's all to do, and it's all the same phenomenon, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So sometimes a table is not just a table.
Correct. And again, sort of visual, if you read any book on visual systems and perception studies, it will tell you this as a point here, and this is a very important point. The people who consider that there is a one-to-one relationship between what we see and what is out there, there's a technical term for it. The psychologists call them naive realists. That's literally the term that is used for people that believe that what is out there is what is really there. So
what would be their role? If I can get you into that.
It's intriguing. I mean, I'm working with the group of people I know that are doing a series of experiments at the moment at one of the top London universities, Imperial College. And what they're doing there is, under controlled conditions, they're having people who are being injected with dimethyltryptamine, the strongest hallucinogenic substance known to man. And what they're doing is they're going into these altered states of consciousness and they're reporting back what they see. Most people who take dimethyltryptamine get what they are called the Machine Elves. Terence McKenna was a researcher that talked about this. And they see elves, they see creatures. Now, what is strange about these creatures is they are independent of the people who are experiencing them. And one of my associates who is involved in this told me a tale comparatively recently where he said he went into this altered state of consciousness and there was an entity and it came over to him and it told him that he shouldn't be doing it that way. It was the wrong way to communicate with them. He then comes to, and a week later, he then takes DMT again, goes into supposedly this dream state, goes into the dream state, and exactly the same creature came over to him and said, I told you last time, this is not the way you do it. This means that these entities have motivations, they're observing us, and they're independent of us in some way, but in other ways they are not. And I think it is all to do with what I call the Aggregorial Model. Egregores are thought forms that can be created by people thinking intensely about particular things. An example of an egregore is probably when you're playing with a Ouija board, whereby something seems to manifest which is greater than the people playing with the Ouija board. You also get things called tulpas, which are thought forms that can be created and can have eventually become independent of you. And there's been experiments done over the years with the creation of these entities in one way or another. And indeed, a group of friends, myself and two associates, are going to be working on a controlled experiment to see if we can create egregores or get a group of other people to create egregores and see if other people can sense them, other mediums can sense them. It's very exciting times at the moment.
So could the fact that they're observing us be, in fact, creating us?
Yes, it could be a double feedback mechanism. I know this sounds strange, but the fact that they are observing us and we are observing them seems to be almost a symbiotic relationship, whereby the true nature of reality is far more complex than our minds can probably conceive of at the moment, because the universe is an incredibly mysterious place. You know, any scientists that turn around and say that we understand it are suffering from hubris. They're not. We know that 94% of the universe is missing. It's dark matter. 94% of the universe is dark matter and dark energy. They're called dark matter and dark energy because nobody actually knows what they are. Doesn't mean that's because they're dark. It just means that we don't know what they are. We know it's there because we know that the galaxies revolve in a particular way. And if the matter that was in the galaxy, the observed galaxies, was just what we could see and measure, the galaxies would revolve in a very different way. The galaxies revolve in a way that that only 6% of that galaxy are we seeing. 94% of it we don't. Which also means that if that is the case with galaxies, it's perfectly reasonable to say it's the same with the Earth. So 94% of the Earth we cannot see, we cannot measure, but it is there. This again, where I think these entities, where the egregorials exist and come through into this reality. We are but a tiny part of a much greater, wider planet Earth, for want of a better term. And these, I think, is where these entities come from and where they come into. But in the final analysis, everything in its base state is information. Everything is digital information. All we do is our brains process and turn digital information into visual images in exactly the same way as a digital television turns digital signals into a digital image that you see on your screen. In fact, even more as an analogy, if you if you have a virtual reality headset, you can actually exist in a three-dimensional world that you can walk around in using a virtual reality headset that is created out of nothing but digital information, zeros and ones. And yet you would believe you were in a cave. I don't know if anybody's ever been used the virtual reality Google Earth, where you can put on a headset and you can go onto Google Earth and you're in virtual reality. You are flying over the surface of the planet. It is as if you were in a three-dimensional recreation of the planet. You can fly down Manhattan between the skyscrapers and they're all around you. But it's not real. It's all digital information. And that's exactly the same as the external reality that we see. Everything is digital.
So, in your opinion, can thoughts create reality?
Yes, thoughts do create reality. Reality is created by thoughts or information. Everything is created by the observer, by the sentient consciousness that is collapsing the wave function around us. Everything is thought. Sir Julian Jaynes, who was a very famous British physicist in the 1920s, towards the end of his life, turned around and said, I believe that the universe is not a great machine, it's a great thought. Erwin Schrödinger, in his book, What is Life? Towards the end of his life, made exactly the same conclusions. Wolfgang Pauli, the quantum physicist, also came to the same conclusions. The idea is at its base level, it is consciousness that is creating everything. Now, the question is, well, how do we define consciousness? And I'd argue that consciousness is everything. Consciousness, we exist in a field of consciousness, just like there are radio waves that you attune with a radio. And it is consciousness that develops everything, consciousness that creates everything. Matter is created from consciousness, not the other way around. You know, scientists will argue that your brain, in some magical way that science doesn't even begin to understand, it seems to be that a reaction of chemicals with electrical signals in your brain and electrical waves seems to create consciousness, creates Michael, creates Anthony. That's nonsense. What is happening is the consciousness itself is what is creating everything that we see and perceive, in my opinion.
Yeah. So you also say that there's evidence that we can go somewhere outside of our bodies, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because if we move away from the idea that somehow we are trapped in our meat machines, there's suddenly a realization that consciousness is not located in the brain. The only reason we believe consciousness is located in the brain, well, there are two reasons. The first one is just by location. The idea is you're looking out of your eyes now and you're listening to things through your ears. If your eyes were located on your kneecap and your ears were either side of your kneecap, you would have the feeling that you were located at a point of space in your kneecap. But our sight and our ears are at the highest part of our bodies for obvious reasons, and that's how we perceive where we are. Now, of course, scientists and materials reductionist scientists will say, no, that is nonsense, because we know that we can measure brain activity, and we know when certain things are felt or thought, the brain reacts. And we know that certain neurons fire when certain people think of certain things. For instance, somebody will think of playing tennis and certain neurons will fire because of that. This is confusing the map with the territory. You can take the back off an old valve radio and you will see the lights going on and off as the radio waves hit the antennae and are processed into sound. But the studio is not in those valves. But they confuse the two. They see, because they see lights going on and off in the brain, or they see brain activity. Therefore, there is a one-to-one relationship between that brain activity and the consciousness that is perceiving it. It could just as easily be something that's processing it from somewhere else. Now, if we then move away from that, we can then start to explain such phenomenon as out-of-the-body experiences, near-death experiences, and lucid dreaming, which I've written extensively about and interviewed many people from around the world who experience these things. I know of people who have been in out-of-body experiences who have perceived information that they couldn't have possibly known and have brought it back. I know of other people that have been in out-of-body experiences where they have met other people, and them and those other people have reported back and they've agreed with the information they saw. But even more importantly, there's a person I know called Graham Nichols, who's an out-of-body trainer, who in 1999 had an out-of-the-body experience where he saw the future. And in this out-of-body experience, he saw a bombing taking place in Soho in London. There was a gay pub was bombed with a nail bomb. He saw that 5 days before the event took place in an out-of-body experience. When he came back from the out-of-body experience, this is 5 days before the event took place, he told 5 people who witnessed it and signed affidavits to say that Graham said there was going to be a terrorist attack in Soho in a pub. 5 days later, the Admiral Duncan pub in Soho, in exactly the location Graham said it would be, was blown up. Now, that to me is irrefutable evidence. You can only come to 2 conclusions on that. Graham is lying, and all the people are lying around him. They're just lying for some reason, which is possible. Or it was a coincidence. Now, I would argue there are coincidences and coincidences. If somebody turned around and says, in the next year, there's going to be a plane crash somewhere on the planet, and it happens, that's a coincidence. If somebody says there's going to be a bomb in a pub in Grold Compton Street in Soho soon, and then 5 days later, there is a bomb in a specific location, in a specific type of location, and a specific hostelry, I think that is proof. And I think anybody that tries to deny that is deluded. I'd then finally like to give an example, and guys, you can do this now. Mark my words, this will astonish you. Do a search online for an album by a band called Coup, C-O-U-P, Coup. It's called Party Music. Go onto Google, find the image of the album cover. Look at that album cover, and you and I and everybody who looks at it knows exactly what it shows. It shows 9/11. It shows the Twin Towers being hit. It shows them in flames, both of them. That album cover was designed in May 2001. It had already been printed. It was in the record shops when 9/11 took place. In fact, they pulled the album cover and changed it because people were so astonished. Now, that album cover is so accurate, it's uncanny. On my Facebook site, I've superimposed one of the stills from one of the films taken at 9/11, the day it took place. And I've superimposed that against the image on the album cover. It is exactly the same, even to where the flames are coming out the buildings.
So the brain is a type of antenna.
If you like, it is a receiver. And the receiver model of the brain has been around for at least 120, 130 years, from people like Henri Bergson, a French philosopher, to people like C.D. Broad. Various writers, various scientists, various psychologists have argued that this is the case. And just a moment's reflection starts to make you believe that this possibly could be it, because there are certain mysteries about the brain that are not understood. For instance, there's something called a binding problem in the brain. Neurologists do not understand why we have a feeling of simultaneity, how it is that if I see a red bouncing ball going down the street, how I see that, because different parts of my brain are processing the color red, different parts of my brain are processing the movement, and various other things. And yet I have a feeling that this is happening now. But the bits of the brain have to communicate in each other to create that image. And that would take time, because brain signals are quite slow in terms of how the signals are transferred across the brain. It's impossible. So they don't know how it works. But then again, they don't know how consciousness is created in the brain either. They haven't got a clue. 1999, a philosopher called David Chalmers at the University of Arizona stood up and said there are two problems. There's the soft problem of science, which is how the brain works in terms of its chemical constituents. But there's the hard problem, how these chemicals create consciousness, self-referential consciousness, how it creates your memories. You know, for instance, they've never found the location of memories in the brain. They've no idea where memories are in the brain. They know that the amygdala processes them, but they don't know where they're actually located. People can have brain damage in certain parts of their brain and their memories still continue. And yet other parts of the brain can be damaged and their memory suddenly doesn't work anymore. It doesn't work. It doesn't mean the memories aren't gone. It just means that the brain, like a computer, in terms of computer memory, it cannot access the memories. Well, clearly, there's something magical about the brain we still don't understand.
I mean, they're saying that it's possible that consciousness has nothing to do with the brain. I heard you talking about the worm study.
Oh, that's right. Yes. A guy called Tam Shomrit. There is a type of worm that you can cut its head off and it will still survive and it will grow a new head. Extraordinary, but this is one of the things it will do. And these particular breed of worms, they know like liver. Okay, they know they like liver for some reason, so they will always move towards liver. If there's liver around, they will move towards it. However, also they hate bright light. So what the scientists did was they placed some liver underneath a bright light. And over a period of time, the worms were able to overcome their fear of bright light. They were trained to overcome their fear of bright light and go underneath and eat the liver. What they then did was they took the worms that had learned this and they cut their heads off, completely cleared out their brains, so there should have been no memories whatsoever. They then grow a new head and a new brain. The animals that did that, or the worms that did that, as soon as the new brain was grown, went straight through to the light to eat the liver. In other words, they remembered that liver was there and that bright light wasn't a problem. How? If the brain is where all this exists, how did that happen? Not only that, there was a guy called John Lorber, who was a British neurosurgeon in the 1960s, I think it was. And John Lorber, one of his patients, was an incredibly intelligent guy, had a first-class honours degree in maths. He died, and they did an autopsy on him. He had no brain. All that he had was the edges of the brain, the surface of the brain around the edges of his skull. But there was nothing except that inside his skull. How on earth did he get a first-class honours degree in maths if he didn't have a brain? Indeed, how could he see anything? How could he smell anything? How could he walk? But he could. This is evidence, and there's something called black swans or white crows. In other words, science advances by the exceptions. If you have a theory and then one case disproves that theory about something, it means your theory is incorrect. That one case of John Lorber and the case of the worm should be sufficient for science to say our model cannot work. If one person can live their life without a brain, there is something strange about the brain. Now, if the brain is a receiver and it can receive in certain ways information, maybe it doesn't need the brain in the way we think it does.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting, right? Now, I want to try to get you on to the whole. This is a simulation aspect of it because we're kind of running out of time.
Okay.
I want you to try to explain to people about how you think that this is all a simulation. Is that what you still think?
Okay, right. The most important thing here is to probably avoid using the word simulation, because the word simulation suggests that it's a simulation of something else. You know, the word simulacra or simulation is a copy of something else. It's not a copy of anything. It is what it is. Okay. Now, the reason that many scientists are coming to conclude that this is a simulation is very simple. Well, it's not simple, but it's important to appreciate. And it is to do with two things. It's to do with the second law of thermodynamics. And the second law of thermodynamics states that energy can only be changed from one thing to another. The amount of energy in the universe can never be lost or gained. You can never lose energy or gain energy. You can change energy into a different form of energy. Heat can be turned into light, for example. But the amount of energy in any enclosed system will always be the same. Okay? Now, it has recently been discovered that information has physicality. Information has energy inside it. Okay? This is known fact. This is some of the research that's been done. So this means that if you went to a black hole and stood outside a black hole and threw your laptop into a black hole, the information of that laptop would be lost to the universe. And of course, the universe arguably is an enclosed system, the sense of that there's nothing outside of the universe. The universe is everything. So in which case, some information has been lost. Now, this contravenes one of the most basic laws of physics. It cannot happen. So what actually takes place when a whole planet is sucked into a black hole, or a spaceship is sucked into a black hole? Stephen Hawking concluded that the answer is that the information is somehow copied, and there is a facsimile of the information that has been lost, which is smeared along the edge of the black hole, the event horizon of the black hole. This information, not only, but all information is smeared in this way. And without going into the technical detail, but it's important to understand, imagine there's the concept of the Big Bang, and the idea is that the whole universe came from a point particle. Again, like the subatomic particles we were talking about, came from a point particle about 13.8 billion years ago, when something happened that wasn't big and it wasn't a bang, but something happened. And space and time suddenly expanded out from this nothing point. Now, again, this is, any logic tells you this doesn't make sense, but this is the modern belief. This expanded out. Now, you can imagine it's like blowing up a balloon, and a balloon expands outwards, which means that it's like we are on the inside of a huge sphere. And the universe is expanding outwards into what the universe is expanding into is an ongoing mystery. But everything there is expanding outwards. Now imagine we are at a point inside the balloon, and the edge of the universe is the inside surface of the balloon. There's an argument that they're saying that there are tiny little points all over the edge of the inner surface. And these are little objects that are Planck squares. Now, the Planck length is the smallest possible piece of space you can have. And a Planck square is literally just 4 of those as a little square. Now, this is where it gets weird. Somebody has calculated how much data, how much bits of information you would need in order to encode the present visible universe. Then they've calculated the number of Planck squares that would be on the edge of this inflated balloon. It's the same number. That is a huge coincidence, and it's led them to believe that this is a hologram, that the true nature of reality is not solid, it's holographic in nature. Now, again, this is not just me talking about this. There was an article, there's articles after articles in scientific magazines. You get them all the time. Every time I buy Scientific American or I buy a copy of New Scientist over here in the UK, they are talking about this. It's just that the general public don't know about it. Okay. There is a research group at the Perimeter Institute in Canada, in Ontario, under the leadership of a guy called Craig Hogan. They are looking for the digitization of space. They are looking for the digital bits, and they're starting to discover them. Okay, this is of profound importance. This is why Elon Musk a few years ago turned around and said it is highly likely that this is a simulation, that this is we are existing in, for want of a better term, a computer program, a holographic computer program. Now, this means that what we think is 3-dimensional space is in fact 2 dimensions that has been expanded outwards. Again, if anybody's interested out there, and you should be, read up the writings of 3 people. Juan Maldacana, who is, I think, Brazilian. There's the late but incredibly talented Israeli quantum physicist called Jacob Bekenstein, who was one of the world's leading quantum physicists, and Craig Hogan himself. Okay? These guys, and Lee Smolin, there's various other people as well. Now, all these guys, particularly the guys that have been involved in the science of black holes, these are the guys that are suggesting this is it. It's actually part of black hole theory. Now, this is astounding stuff, because suddenly it means that the physical world we see outside of us is not what it seems. And I know I'm going to sound vain here, but I think I am the only writer on the planet that's making the links between consciousness, how consciousness processes information, to how it is that the quantum physicists are doing one thing and the cosmologists are doing other things. The quantum physicists aren't talking to the cosmologists aren't talking to the neurologists, and the neurologists and all the other scientists are most definitely not talking to the people who have out-of-the-body experiences, near-death experiences with dimethyltryptamine. Because they're not, because they don't want to get involved in it. They have to, because the evidence is there, and all they need to do is join the dots. And sometimes I feel like I'm somebody banging on a window saying, for God's sake, listen to what I'm writing about, please stop ignoring me. At least be in a position to say that what I'm saying is incorrect. They don't engage with me. For some reason, they don't engage.
I wonder why.
Well, it's because there's a degree of, I don't know, arrogance about science. Scientists usually train and get their PhDs and do postdoctoral research in a very precise area. They don't look at anything outside that precise area. I call it silo science. And they're all like that. And they build up careers based upon the things they build. But they don't want to know anything else. They don't want to be cross-fertilized or discuss. And it means that all that happens is that you need an outsider who's not constrained by the rules and regulations of being an academic. I'm not constrained by academic restrictions, by the money I can get for my research projects. I'm literally free to go and say, well, that looks interesting, and read that academic paper. And believe me, Michael, everything I've spoken about today comes from academic papers. You know, I'm not saying this because I'm talking to dead beings from the planet Tharg. It's not because I'm channeling information. It's not because some 7,000-year-old Lemurian is talking to me or the spirits talk to me. Nothing of that. I am referring, if you read my books, every single thing I say is referred back to its source material. Every single thing. And I say to my readers, you go back to the source papers and you come to your own conclusions as well. And if I've made the wrong conclusions, that's fine. I don't mind. It's not as if I'm trying to prove anything. I just want answers. And this is why, in many ways, a lot of the scientists are very, very worried about, well, most of them just ignore me. Most of them don't even bother reading anything I write because I'm in the wrong sections in bookcases and in bookshops. So they're not even picking my books up. But the scientists that do, regularly more and more scientists are coming to me now. And they're saying, my God, I hadn't realized what your angle is here. I've got a university at the moment. I mean, I already have a degree in postgraduate qualifications, but there's a university at the moment working with me. They want me to do my PhD and my doctorate by publication because they think my work is worth an official qualification and a doctorate in the subject. And this is because what I'm saying has rational, logical sense. And in time, when I'm long gone, I am sure that somebody will come along after I'm dead. I mean, I'm in my mid-60s, approaching my late 60s now. You know, I haven't got much longer here. There will be somebody in 10 or 15 years' time will pick up my books, and my books are in universities, by the way. I mean, copies of my books are at the Harvard University have got copies of my books now. Princeton has got copies of my books. Berkeley have got copies of my books. Oxford University have got copies of my books. But they're not reading them in the right way. They're there in the libraries, but nobody's picking them up. But one day somebody will. And when they do, it'll be, shoot, this guy really did have it. Well, that's what I'd like to believe. Of course, I could be delusional. I could be crazy. I could be just a typical outsider that just believes I've pulled the things together. And we know that throughout history, there's been a lot of them. Who knows? Maybe I am just mad.
So are you familiar with quantum gravity research?
Yes, I am.
They postulate that the world is pixelated bit of information.
Correct, and it's the quantum, the GO 6000 machine in Darsheim, I think, in Germany, was one of the first machines that picked up the pixelation. And I know that Craig Hogan has written about this particular machine. I think it's the 6000 machine. It's somewhere in southern Germany anyway. And they're picking up the pixelation. You're quite correct. And they weren't looking for the pixelation. They were looking for quantum gravity. But there seems to be a linkage between quantum gravity and the pixelation of space, because of course quantum gravity is also something that is integral if we're going to be unifying, because in physics, for instance, the great problem of physics, and again, physicists don't talk about this, the problem is we have two completely different conflicting schools of science. We have quantum physics, which deals with the very small, and we have cosmology that deals with the very big. Both of them have their own mathematical structures, and they both have their own formulae to explain how reality works. The problem is the maths that works with one does not work with the other. They are in parallel lines, and the whole point of quantum gravity is to try and to unify these two conflicting areas. because clearly you cannot have two explanators of reality, both of whom seem to be correct, but both of whom are wrong in relation to each other. Just as the problem is with quantum physics itself. At what point does quantum madness and statistical waves turn into Newtonian sense? You know, how large does a molecule need to be before it has wave-particle duality? The latest research I've shown, the last time I researched it, there were molecules like buckyballs. A buckyball is a spherical molecule that has 60 molecules in it, 60 atoms in it, I should say. They show wave-particle duality. Going back to my point I was saying earlier on, the objects, when they are not observed, are a wave. But when they are measured or observed, they become a particle. We're talking about big molecules here. We're talking about molecules that are coming to the size of viruses. Now, that's really creepy. And they've still yet to get to the level where this weird wave-particle duality stops. The argument is it doesn't stop. It doesn't stop. It's there all the time. And this is, again, some of the conflicting areas. We have the many worlds interpretation of particle physics, that there are billions of universes, and we are just one of the universes. We have the model, the Copenhagen interpretation of quantum physics, that consciousness and the act of observation collapse the wave function. We have David Bohm's implicate and explicate orders model to explain reality. We have Einstein's model, which is related to David Bohm's model. We have the Hawking-Hartle model called the top-down hypothesis of quantum physics. We have Kramer's model of quantum physics, the transactional model of quantum physics. All of these support my hypothesis, all of them. Even though they seem to conflict with each other, each one of these I can apply to my hypothesis and use them as evidence for my hypothesis.
So black holes create new dimensions, you think? I know you were talking about black holes earlier. I just wanted to go back to that real quick.
Black holes are curious things. There is an argument to say that things that are sucked into a black hole will eventually come out through a wormhole into becoming a white hole, which means wormholes can be used as tunnels into alternate universes. Now, if this is the case, it gets very intriguing, because recent research has suggested that there are micro black holes that are not much bigger than some atomic particles. Now, if there are these micro black holes, it means that your brain is full of these micro black holes. And if your brain is full of these micro black holes, it means that your brain can attune into alternate realities. Now, there are two researchers, and again, if anybody's interested, read up their research. There's a guy called Roger Penrose, who's the Rouse Ball Professor of Mathematics at Cambridge University, emeritus professor, I guess he's retired now, and a guy called Professor Stuart Hamerhoff, who's Professor of Anesthesiology at the University of Arizona. These two guys have come together with a model of consciousness which they call Orchestrated Objective Reduction, or ORC-OR. They suggest that within the brain structures of the human brain, and within each neuron, are tiny little structures called microtubules. These are the structures that hold together, and they're like the scaffolding of each neuron. Okay, these things are so small that they believe that they can be affected by subatomic particles. Now, subatomic particles can choose to be in existence or not, which means that a subatomic particle that's teetering on existing or not can affect what these microtubules do. Now, they also know, and this is extraordinary, that these microtubules also give off light. They give off single photons of light, biophotons. Not only that, but they fire these off inside themselves to cause what's called interference patterns. And billions of these microtubules are creating billions of interference patterns. Okay, what is a big example of an interference pattern? A hologram. So in which case, within our own brains, we are creating holograms. So the holograms that are being created by the brain are then expanded outwards, which gives us the external reality we think is external to ourselves. Finally, these subatomic particles also seem to react to something called the zero-point field. The zero-point field is, again, information and energy that seems to be coming from somewhere else, from alternate realities. 0 point energy is supposed to be an energy that fills the vacuum of space, and it comes in from nowhere. There are subatomic particles at the moment they know of called virtual particles that come out of nowhere, exist for a trillionth of a second, and disappear again. They don't know where they come from or where they go back to. This is, again, known science. Now, the 0 point field and 0 point energy could be what dark energy is. And in which case it means that your brain, or the microtubules in your brain, processes that information to create and reprocess the signal of the brain, what we were talking about before, being a signal processor. Again, the evidence is there. It's just nobody's joining the bloody dots.
So do you think that black holes are holograms as well? Like the whole universe is a hologram, or just,
the whole universe is a hologram. And if the question is, well, this is what the science is suggesting. And of course, if the whole universe is a hologram, then the black holes themselves must be holographic in nature. But they show certain things they do seem to suggest there's a holographic nature to them. But because, of course, all a black hole is something that has... Its matter has collapsed to such an extent that the escape velocity is greater than the speed of light. For example, the escape velocity on the planet Earth, because you know how mass works is, we've recently discovered the Higgs boson, which is supposedly the thing that gives objects mass, but we can't go into the science of that now because we haven't got time. But a black hole is simply, imagine the Earth, and the reason we have gravitational pull on the Earth is because its mass is greater, is very, very great. And the Higgs field pulls us down into the mass of the Earth. If the Earth gets smaller, but its mass remains the same, its gravitational pull gets greater. As it gets smaller, the gravitational pull gets greater and greater. So imagine a star like the sun that is also shrunk down to such an extent that it becomes no larger than, say, a planet. That's a neutron star. It means that everything is so collapsed on it that even the atoms have collapsed into themselves. Okay? The gravitational field of that is really, really powerful. But light can escape because, as I said before, the light speed is 186,000 miles per second. So light can escape. Because, of course, spaceships and rockets need to travel at more than 24,000 miles per hour in order to escape the gravitational pull of Earth. The gravitational pull of a neutron star means that the rockets would need to travel at a ridiculous speed, but not the speed of light. Now, what is important here, and this is of profound importance, is that gravitational fields also change the speed of time. So, for instance, time on the sun is different to time on the Earth. And if anybody's watched the film Interstellar, there is one sequence in Interstellar where they're on the surface of this planet, and because the gravitational force is so strong, their time is completely different. They're down there for years and years and years, which is the opposite for a few minutes. But the guys in the spaceship hovering around the planet, it's been years and years, been 60 or 70 years. We're on the planet is about 10. This happens now. This is known science. This is relativity. So at the edge of a black hole is a star that has shrunk into itself to such an extent that the escape velocity is greater than the speed of light, which means even light cannot escape. And that's why it's a black hole. So the light cannot escape. But it also means that time for a black hole is completely and utterly different. It exists in a different place in time and space because it's collapsed onto itself. And what it does, it sucks everything into it because the gravitational force is so strong that anything that comes anywhere near it gets sucked into it. But if there are mini black holes, it means they could be everywhere. And they think that, again, Bose-Einstein condensates, which are these are little units of energy that seem to carry quantum physics to much larger levels. A laser, for instance, is a Bose-Einstein condensate. Now, these things are incredibly weird as well, and they think there's a link between Bose-Einstein condensates, black holes, energy, time and space, and it's all incredibly interesting. And it's telling us something, it's just we're ignoring it. It's powerful. It is incredibly, incredibly powerful. I feel sometimes that I've got all these pieces of a jigsaw puzzle, and they're on the table, and I've got all the pieces. All I need is to put them together.
Do you think we can escape?
The argument is escape this.
Yeah, escape the hologram, so to speak.
Well, there's an argument to say that death is when you escape the hologram. The idea that when you die, properly die, not die as in you die in space and time, because consciousness is non-physical, because of course it isn't. Consciousness is not made of anything. All of the things I've discussed now, consciousness is not made of any of them. Conscious is non-physical. Consciousness has no extension in space. It has no extension in time. You can't weigh consciousness. You can't take consciousness out of the brain. Well, you can take, because consciousness is everywhere. So in which case, when we die, do we go back into the field? Do we go back into the field of consciousness, where either we can be reborn as somebody else, which could be reincarnation, or as my own model, cheating the ferryman hypothesis goes, you can be reborn as yourself and you live your own life again and again and again. But you can change that life, as we touched upon before we started the interview properly. There are myriads of ways out of this. And maybe this is it. We live our lives over and over again until we get to the point where we live the perfect life, and then we move on to something else. What that something else is, who knows? Possibly it is what the mystics say. It's going back into the totality, which is everything. The moving back into what the Kabbalists would call the Or Ein Sof, the thing that is everything. The idea that at the point of reality, we are one single consciousness experiencing itself subjectively, and that consciousness is the universe. That consciousness is what we would call God, what we would call something, the greater consciousness of everything.
All right, Anthony, I appreciate your time.
Okay, thank you, Michael.
Can you tell everybody where to find you?
No, absolutely. If you're interested in my work, I'm on Facebook, very, very active on Facebook. If you're interested in checking me out on Instagram, I'm on Instagram as Ferryman54, and that's getting more and more popular there. Please follow me on Facebook. All my books have their own Facebook pages. If you're interested in my books, just take yourself into your local bookshop. You can order them in any bookshops in the USA, Canada, the UK, and in Europe. Also, my books are on Amazon. You can buy my books on Kindle. You can buy my books as Audible audio books. You can check my work and buy my books off my website if you want, and I can send you signed copies, which is anthonypeake.com. If you want more information about me and my work, literally just Google me. Just go onto YouTube, put in Anthony Peake. There are literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of interviews, lectures, talks on there. There is enough to keep you going for a number of lifetimes if you're interested to pursue my work. But please join in on Facebook and join me on Instagram. We've got an international community that's getting bigger and bigger by the day. People are joining day on day. There are scores of people joining me. There are scores of people messaging me. This is a word of mouth movement. Get involved. If you're interested in any of this stuff, but you are interested in actual science rather than new age waffle, this is where you should be. Thank you.
All right. And everybody, the links to everything Anthony Peake will be down in the description, and we'll be right back right after this. Welcome back to...
All right, guys. So that was episode 12, I believe. I think I said 11 earlier. It's 12 or something like that. I'm sure. Just go to the Conflict Radio, the playlist on the channel, and you can see every single episode. But I guess that wasn't too bad. I thought that was going to be a lot worse, considering it. I thought it was only episode 11 or 12. So let's see what you guys are thinking. Does anybody? All right. So just so the people who don't know what's going on that came in late, we had Anthony Peake on, I guess 130 episodes ago, and that was the interview we did with him. Stop it! My cat is attacking me. I didn't put my cats up because, well, I don't really have a guest right now. But we're going to be doing, we're going live with Anthony Peake in 7 hours at 4:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I believe it's going to be 7:30 p.m. in somewhere in Australia. I would imagine that they have different time zones there, but maybe on the east or west. I'm not really sure where these guys are. But here, let me. I'm gonna take the link to the show that we're doing in about 7 hours, and I'm gonna put it in the chat box here. I understand that there's a lot of people on the East Coast of the United States or in the United States that listen to this show that. No, you can't interview my cat. That'd be fun to do. I would imagine that they'd probably want nothing more than to tell me to stop doing that and go feed them. All right. So do you guys have any questions for Anthony that maybe you guys are going to be in bed for? Put in the chat box. Vash says he's in Victoria, East Coast, so I'd imagine that that's a later time for you guys. I don't know. I don't know anything about Australia. Show your kitty. I will show my cat one day. Actually, if you go and you got to find me on Facebook. I got plenty of pictures of my cats on Facebook. Just send me a friend request. I'll accept you. My name's just go to Conflict Radio. Send me a message. Tell me I told you so, and I'll add you. Find Conflict Radio on Facebook. All right, so here are the questions I've got down. Gazu, what's the meaning of life? Dude, nobody really knows that. You want me to ask him that, really? I'll write it down. What's the meaning of life? I mean, I would imagine that the meaning of life is pretty much to get through it, right? Isn't that what we're doing? I think that if we can get through life without killing ourselves, that's a win for everybody. That's make it all the way through without offing yourself. You won. That's it. Game over. You won it. That's the trick. All right. All right. I don't know what Mark. I don't know why you're swearing. All right. So we don't. I'm gonna ban you from the channel, dude, if you keep it up. All right, that's just the way it is. Like we can't use nasty words in the chat box, okay? If you keep it up, I mean, I have to ban you from the channel. I mean, it is what it is, right? All right, so Mana Ray of Hope 23 says, I guess ask him his thoughts on Crowley and the Golden Dawn if you feel up to it. All right, I'll write it down. Crowley and the Golden Dawn. All right, so I wrote that down. Mark Brady, I apologize. You got it, man. I mean, we can't do it. I mean, the YouTube they'll, I mean, honestly, guys, I mean, this costs. I have to try to get ad revenue from somewhere, right? So it's got to be here. I don't like to cuss on the show. I don't like to, I mean, I just don't. I mean, regardless of I mean, I can go to another platform, and I'm not going to personally talk that way. You know what I mean? So, I mean, it doesn't affect me, but you guys will affect me if I allow that kind of talk in the chat box. And honestly, that's not why I'm here. So, I mean, I'm not here to make money, but I'm on YouTube to make money. I mean, it has to pay for itself. That's kind of, there's a lot of money that goes into the show. I mean, the artwork's not free. The microphones aren't free. The stuff's not free. So, I have to protect the revenue stream, and that's YouTube. I mean, I can go up on all kinds of other platforms, but they don't have any revenue. So this is revenue. Yes, Sapphire Elf says, feel free to disagree, but be respectful. So I guess asking about how the pandemic will play out. Well, I mean, he's not a psychic. I mean, I don't even know where he stands on that. I mean, does he think it's a pandemic? I suppose I can ask him. I'll just put pandemic. And there you go, Paul. You tricked me into saying words I shouldn't say. I'll write that down. I want to know what he thinks about perception, reality, and how MSM and social media manipulation are being used as a tool for manipulation. Yeah, I have a question wrote down about that. I wrote, let me know, Vash, what you think of this. I just have a comment here. Control perception, control reality. That's that's a note I have to myself. So I think that's kind of in the topic. I'm going to put, all right. So I'll put media / control perception / control reality. And we'll see. All right. So let me put that up. Conjecture is one thing, but is there any way to test what you think or an experiment we could do to prove something? All right. So I'll write that down. All right. Here, let me put it up here. Test to prove. Conjecture, test to prove. So I kind of have to do little notes. Sapphire or Vash says yes. Sapphire Sun says, have a good question for the guest. Extremely fascinating. Does he think that we are all coexisting in the simulation, or are we all extras participating in his personal simulation? Now that's interesting. That's a good question. I'm actually going to have to flip page to write that down. That is a good question. Are we coexisting? Are we coexisting in a simulation, or are we actors in his? It's a good question, man. All right, we failed the plan. No, we didn't. No, we didn't. I don't think we failed the plan. I really don't at all. I think, everybody is who is Corn Pop. I actually have that wrote down already. Don't worry, guys. I will ask the who is Corn Pop question. All you guys in Australia that are coming, I guess, that are going to be up. It's, I would imagine that there's a lot of listeners in the UK. I have a lot of listeners in Ireland and Scotland and, all over the European area. I mean, it's going to be like right smack in the middle of the day for you guys. So that'll be pretty interesting. You guys here in the States, it's going to be the middle of the night. I'm literally going to end this show right now, and I'm going to go take a nap, and then I'm going to get up, I guess, what time is it? Let's see. It is 8. So I'll go to sleep. I'll probably get up like 12:30. That way I can lollygag around for a couple hours, drink some coffee before I get going with him. But if you can astral travel outside of Earth, can you see the simulation from above? Well, I wouldn't imagine so, Mary Kay, because he said that he thinks the whole everything is a simulation. We heard that he was just talking about that. So if it's not just the Earth, it's everything. Not Quite Human says, but you love the Aussies the most. That's true. I do. You guys are awesome. I literally want to like run for president of the United States. So I could send my army over to help you guys. Like, I mean, I can't. I'm not going to be able to, but if I could, I would. Can someone who's having an out-of-body experience jump into someone else's body and get trapped? All right, I'll write that down. Out of body back to someone else's. All right, so I got that wrote down. Can we call in? Yeah, I don't see why not, Vash. I'm really worried about the Australians calling in at 8 o'clock at night, because that's about the time you guys are drunk fighting with yourselves all the time in our Discord group, which is funny. I get a kick out of it. I just ignore it, but I'll be, some nights I'll be up and I'm getting ready to go to bed, and there's like some drunken brawl going on in the Discord group. It's like, what the hell? Damn Australians, always fighting with each other. It's the funniest shit. Do we plan our lives before we are born? All right, Loy, I'll ask that. do we plan our lives before we are born? Trying to write fast, that we don't keep you guys waiting. Bahaha, this is true, Vash says. It's true. It's true. You guys are brutal. I mean, it's the funniest shit ever. We're shooting each other. Yeah, maybe, but I mean, you can on Discord, I suppose. Russell Crowe fighting around the world. Come on, Tugga. That's right. You guys are nuts. All right, so I guess I'm gonna let you guys go. Is anybody? I'll give another couple minutes if anybody has a question for Anthony Peake. Go ahead and put it in the chat box. I'll give it a couple more minutes here, and then I'll move on, and I will see you all in. Let's see. It says live in 7 hours. Actually, I can't do that. I was going to go over to the other StreamYard thing and look, but I can't because then it would end the show. I would like to know about what he thinks about what comes after death. Well, that's what the book about Cheating the Ferryman, a book he just wrote. It's about that. So I'm just put a note here: life after death. But that's his recent book. We will be talking about that. I do want to talk about I am going to talk about the Clockwork Elves. I guess the Machine Elves. I call them Clockwork Elves, Machine Elves. I think it's the same thing. I am going to talk about that. I was listening to that in the other episode before and had a ton more questions listening to that just a little bit ago. So we're going to talk about that some more. 4 more thumbs up till 50 likes, Vash says. Sapphire Elf says, no more beer for me today. Hungover as hell. Greasy eggs and bacon, they do the trick. They sure do. I know, but I want to see what he thinks. I gotcha. That's cool. How did you get to this assumption? Mark, I don't understand what you mean. Assumption of what? Like if energy matter equal, I mean, assumption on anything. Is that a question for Anthony Peake? Like on which assumption? I mean, he's got a bunch of them, I would assume. Like if energy equals matter, maybe matter manifests life simple to observe itself. So I guess that's interesting. Kind of what I get as a takeaway from the whole concept. Vash, can we get 4 more likes, guys? Love and even 50. All right, so I don't know where we're at now. Looks like we don't even have 50 people in here. I lost everybody because Anthony Peake went away. So, one more like, it looks like. One more. We can get one more. This guy is banana smart, Sapphire Sun says. It's true. He is. He's absolutely fascinating. And I don't want him coming on this show to be an inconvenience. So there we go. 50 likes. Thanks, guys. Really do appreciate it. I don't want him coming on the show to be an inconvenience to him. So I will go live at 3:30. And I want to get him on the show a ton because the guy fascinates me. He's one of the reasons why I created this podcast myself, just so I can have an excuse to talk to him. It was him and the whole quantum jumping thing, which we will get into again, I'm sure, because quantum jumping fascinates me. Do you guys have any weird dreams lately? I had some weird dreams last night. Very interesting. I don't know if it's probably because I was going through the smoking withdrawal is what I'm thinking. Maybe that's what it was because I haven't been smoking. I've been breathing weird. I felt like I had to hit my inhaler or whatever. And so I hit my inhaler and then I took some Tums because I didn't know if it was something to do with indigestion. So I've just been feeling really off. But then I dreamed really weird. And I don't know what to think. Like, I've been dreaming weird lately. I got to tell you, weird. Hank Stolk says, I keep a dream journal, heaps of weird ones in there. You know, I have this app on my phone. I'll go ahead and share it with you guys. I got to open it up and see what it's actually called. I have this app on my phone, and it's called, I'm looking here, Sleep Talk. It's a red app with a dude laying in a bed. It's called Sleep Talk. And what I do is I'll run that app at night when I'm sleeping because I talk in my sleep a lot too. And it's funny to hear, you know, when I'm listening to it the next day. But it only records if you make a sound or if there's a sound going on. So when I wake up, I'll listen to it, when I'm having a cup of coffee or something, and through like 9 hours of sleep or 8 hours of sleep or 7 hours of sleep, however long I'm in there that night, it maybe records 15, 20 minutes of just whenever I make noises. So, obviously it's going to pick up all your gas type sounds, or, if you start snoring loud for some reason, or cough or sneeze, but it also records you if you're talking in your sleep. So I always have that running. So what I've noticed a lot of times what happens is I'll dream something and I'll wake up and I'll be thinking about this dream that I had. And then I'll fall back asleep within just a couple minutes. Like I'll just kind of wake up. You know how it is. You're laying there, you wake up, you're laying there, you're thinking about this dream you had, you fall back asleep, and then you wake up and you're like, oh, I woke up. I was dreaming a really cool dream, but I don't remember what the hell I was dreaming about. So what I do now is when I wake up after a weird dream, I'll quickly speak out loud what I remember about it, and then I'll fall back asleep, and the sleep app records it. So it's actually kind of neat. Not Quite Human says, what do you talk about in your sleep? I don't know, man. Some weird shit, dude. Weird. I mean, half the time I can't even understand what I'm saying. So it's interesting. One day we'll do a show where I just play like a year's worth of sleep app videos for you guys. And you guys will have a good laugh with it. All right. So we're going to wrap this up. It's not a normal show, but it was a fun show. I needed to listen to it anyway. And I thought, why not listen to it with you guys? Get some questions for what we got going on here in just 6-7 more hours. And I'll wrap it up for everybody that's listening. Remember, you can always find us online. Just go to www.conflictradio.net. You can find us on Apple, iTunes, Spreaker, and all of your normal podcast catchers. Remember, guys, until like 6-7 hours from now, I guess, or whenever you wake up and listen to the live show that we're doing later, because it's in the middle of the night, unfortunately for everybody here in America. But get some sleep, and we'll see you. We'll see you on the flip side. You can listen to the recording, so you'll have a little bonus when you wake up, I suppose. So until then, batten down the hatches and be safe.
Some aircraft that were clean. Talks about
Greetings and welcome to Conflict Radio.